Tonight we have an interesting story with our very own Chief of Police, Andrew Smith. We were able to formally interview him, and he told us about a case he dealt with a teenage boy.
A partner of mine, we were two patrol officers in one vehicle. We got a call that some young kids were out with a gun in a local park. And we drove up, we saw about 5 of them, young Hispanic kids, and they were believed to be armed with a gun. So we drove up, took up a position of advantage on our police car, and held them at gunpoint until we could determine that they were not armed. I walked out to start searching them, and had one guy put his hands up on the back of his head, along with the rest of them. And my gun was out, and I recall being in what we call a low ready position, which is down here, not aimed at everybody, and your finger on the slide, not on the, it's on the side of the weapon, not on the trigger. And I looked, one of the kids turned over his shoulder towards me with his hands over his head. And of course that made me pay attention to him, because if he's looking at where I am, he's got really no reason to be turning around. He's giving him clear direction. So and I saw him drop his hand from the back of his head and reach for his waistband. And that immediately, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, so to speak. And so I started raising my gun up, anticipating that he was going to pull out a gun and try and shoot me. And as I put the gun and got it towards him, I took my finger off of the slide and put it on the, so it was no longer on the frame, it was on the trigger, because I thought I was going to have to shoot this kid. And sure enough, he pulls out a gun out of his waistband, like this, looks back at me, and then tosses it to the ground next to me. Well, thankfully I waited, and I didn't pull the trigger at that time, because he was an underage, he was a minor, 16 or 17-year-old kid out there playing with a gun. But I think of how different my life would have been if I would have shot that young man that particular day. And maybe it would have been justified had he turned around or tried to shoot me or something. But I was just glad that it worked out the way it did. It was a minor incident in a long career, but it certainly could have been a major incident in anybody's life. So I'm really just glad it turned out the way it did.